Yeah. So the evangelistic effectiveness of the early church is really provoking this reaction of persecution, especially as the gospel spreads up to upper classes, as you're seeing, and towards those who are actually the religious leaders of the society.
Yeah.
And yeah.
It shows how God uses division, corruption, persecution to bring about the fulfillment of the commission that we read about in Acts 1. You'll be my witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. Almost inspired, because we would love to just kind of stay put here in Jerusalem. Now that we've cleared the first hurdle, the Hellenistic and the Hebrew widows are being cared for. But no, God has this centrifugal force that is going to send them in the face of persecution. It's helpful for us to remember that.
Indeed.
Because as we look at Psalm 33, and we realize that our nation is being dismantled by its own leaders, and even the church itself seems to be dismantled by bishops perhaps in other countries, but sometimes perhaps even in our own. And we're not going to wade into the swamp of ecclesiastical politics, but we're also not going to just kind of hide our heads in the sand like ostriches and pretend this stuff isn't still happening like it was back then. But God is so sovereign in using this sort of crisis to bring about a greater good than we would have had if we had just kind of had a hunky-dory time.
Right, yeah, and in fact that's thematic. That's a literary theme of the book of Acts, that all these persecutions just seem so disastrous. And I mean, we read them on the page, and we kind of idealize Paul and Silas singing in prison as if they're having a happy, praise and worship session, in jail. But that was not fun.
They're starving, they're bruised, they're
in stocks, they're chained up. This is terribly uncomfortable, just brutal. And yet they're praising God. But there's this principle of the upward fall, or the happy fault, that all of these persecutions that happen to the church throughout Acts only serve to further the gospel. So let us not despair in contemporary society. Yes, the challenges that we face in the contemporary church, both inside and outside, are daunting, but let's take a lesson from the book of Acts and from the leadership of the Holy Spirit and realize that if we look forward, to use a trite phrase, the silver lining of these persecutions, it's the opportunity to proclaim the gospel. And so when we're faced with these challenges, let's ask ourselves, well, this looks indeed daunting, this looks like a huge setback, but where is the Holy Spirit lining of this cloud, so to speak? Where is the opportunity that the Lord is opening up for the gospel to be advanced? And oftentimes in very surprising and, as it were, mind-blowing ways.
Right. And 2 of the 7 deacons just happen to be, Stephen is the proto-martyr.
Yes.
So in chapter 7, we're going to see what a gracious and supernatural blessing comes. But Philip in Acts 8 ends up being the first to evangelize the Ethiopian eunuch on his way back from Jerusalem to Ethiopia. And famously, he is the one who carries the gospel. So Philip, as a deacon, he's taken care of the widows, the Hellenists, but he's going to be used by God for gargantuan graces.
Right. So it's not as if the diaconate is only given over to, caring for the material goods of the church. They're men of faith and full of the Holy Spirit, it says, and they're preachers and evangelists, as we see in subsequent chapters. And so again, to me, this passage is always, emphasizing that the proclamation of the gospel, the ministry of the word and prayer, it's the central focus of the apostles. It has to be the central focus of the church. This is our one great gift to humanity. Of all the organizations on the planet, we are the only one that's entrusted with the proclamation of the saving news of Jesus Christ. So God forbid that we should blunt that we should suppress that we would put that second place and let other activities, political activities, so on, be they good in themselves or not, but let anything else take the priority in our personal lives or in our corporate culture as a Catholic Church. Always has to be focused on the proclamation of the gospel. Even those who are set aside to care for the material needs of the early community were themselves evangelists of great effectiveness, as we see in the subsequent chapters.
Yeah, there's such a marriage of heaven and earth, the natural and the supernatural. Being heavenly minded doesn't make us useless on earth, it makes us fearless.
That's right.